All right. Okay. So the structure, let me turn around, then you'll see better. Share my screen anyway. So the structure is going to be the regular petal and die. So you've got your point, and then immediately you put in your embedded quotation, which is your evidence. Obviously, then you are going to name the technique, right? At this point, we are going to zoom into a keyword from the evidence, aren't we? Just as we normally would do. And then you do your die. If you think that the definition of the word is necessary, then you write the definition. If you don't think the definition is necessary, go straight into the image and the effect on the reader. But when you're doing the literature, you have to then here talk about the context, right? So after you've done all of your zooming in, then you need to pan out, right? So if I've zoomed in on something, which is the keyword in the quotation, then I've got to pan out and look at the big picture again. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when I'm zooming out, when I'm panning out and I'm looking at the big picture, I'm talking about how does that make sense in terms of the historical information I know, right? In the Victorian era, children were treated very poorly, and therefore this is seen when Oliver is doing this and this and this. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the context, right? So then we've got some contextual information there, and then immediately after that, you can go back and do, so this is all of your analysis here, analysis. And then you've got your link. So in a literature piece of writing, we've just got one extra thing just before the link, which is mentioning the context. Just before the link, just before you're ready to finish your paragraph. So this is particularly important because in the Victorian times, this is what society was like. So Charles Dickens is telling us this. Charles Dickens is criticizing that. Yeah.
So like it connects with the context, because like if I'm just explaining about a key word, like it might seem a bit ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and without any context, it doesn't really have much of a meaning, does it? So we have to say, this is, with this quotation, this is what Charles Dickens is telling us about Oliver's experiences. And Oliver's experiences are like this because of the Victorian society and because of the context.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, are you ready?
But one more question is, like, when I'm like writing paragraphs about like these kind of like experiences, should I say, like, then for my technique, like when I'm trying to focus on a concept, like where a child is being labored, for example, like, then what could I write in my technique? Or should I just jump into
So the technique is obviously going to be anything that you've included in your quotation. So the choice of quotations is very important. So you might go for things like, oh, the writer has used a rhetorical question, or the writer has used a hyperbole, or the writer has used repetition, like facts, facts, facts. Also, remember, we've got something like semantic field. Semantic field, remember, is when you have a group of words from all over the paragraph that together are saying the same message. So it doesn't only have to be like similes and metaphors and personification, but you can, you know, talk about broader things like hyperbole, like rhetorical questions. But choose your quotations really, really carefully. Now, so that it does include some kind of a technique, because you'll probably find that your analysis is much richer and much stronger if you've got a strong quotation that's like similes or metaphors or personification or hyperbole, right? However, If you really, really, really can't find anything, then your technique is quite simply going to be, oh, this adjective, this verb, this adjectival phrase, something like that. Okay? Any other questions?
And this is not about like this task, but like in general, when it comes to writing a petal, am I allowed to like group the point and the evidence into like one sentence?
Not usually, no. The evidence shouldn't, the evidence shouldn't, your evidence is your quotation, isn't it? So you shouldn't really have a quote in the first sentence. It's better to keep them separate.
Okay.
So you say, you know, oh, Charles Dickens presents Victorian England as being a very harsh place to live. That's a point, right? You don't then put your evidence inside that point. So it's probably better for you to keep them separate because that makes it cleaner in your head.
Okay.
Then you don't get things muddled up and so just keep it nice and separate. Good question. Any other questions?
I think I'm all right.
You think you're all right? Are we ready to go? Yeah?
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah, let's have a go. Let's have a go. Now, listen, don't worry too much about the vocabulary. Don't worry too much about the vocabulary, right? Just try to go for the general gist. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to locate, first of all, what are Oliver's experiences, right? Now, his experiences might be quite different from our experiences of life, right? Because he's poor, number one, and number two, he is living in Victorian England, Victorian society. So what are his experiences and how have they been shaped by the fact that he lives in Victorian society? That's where we start to look. You know, when people are reading, they try to understand all of the vocabulary and, oh, I don't understand this. Don't get too worried about the vocabulary. Try to look for his experiences first. When you find an experience, then try to zoom in on the quote that you want to find from there.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then let's have a go. So let's try to head for 3 paragraphs then.
Okay.
All right then. Okay, off you pop.